And I wanted to know if we could just start really by delving into your commentary there, where you were looking at not just what's happening right now, but the realities that you, I, all of us in this nation are going to have to deal with in the current moment and in the hereafter. There is going to be a moment where we are looking back at this period with some greater vision, I hope. What does the criminal legal system look like to you after we reach that point where we have to look back and think about what cleanup is going to require?
Well, number one, we have to win. And by win, I mean we have to save our democracy. There is no question that there's a military coup that is planned, none. And there is no question in my mind that that will be coming after the midterms if we are unable to turn Trump back. Really good
Wow.
news is that we have polling right now that shows this is the most unpopular president 100 days in U.S. history. So some things are going in the right direction after so many years of things going in the wrong direction. But what does it mean? It means the same thing that it meant when people look back on World War II and they
Mm.
said, which were the leaders who caved? Which were the ones who said, oh, just let the Germans take one country or two. They'll stop there. It's called appeasement. You do not
Yeah.
appease dictators and bullies. You fight them, and you fight them with everything that you have. I don't want to be on that side of the line as the appeaser. I don't want to be folding. I want to be fighting. I want to be there. And
Mm.
I know that most Americans feel the same way because they actually love this country. They want it to be its best for all of its flaws. They don't want its flaws to be its end. So, that's where we are. But it's also, the way we talk about Watergate, the Watergate scandal involving Richard Nixon organizing a burglary, a
Mm.
crime, a felony of his opponent's headquarters. There were a whole bunch of people lining up to do what Richard Nixon wanted. And then there were the ones we talk about, the courageous ones who stood up to it, even quit their jobs or took action against it. I want to be on
Mm.
that side. You could talk about the Red Scare when a guy named Joe McCarthy made up this big lie about how there are all these communists running the government. It was in complete crap from beginning to end. And eventually it came out. And anybody who was on his team wrecking the lives of our fellow citizens for no good reason has gone down in infamy. And they should go down in infamy for that. Well, we are there again. So there are going to be
Mm.
those of us who, despite the fear that some people have the courage to stand up and fight and go there and say what needs to be said and push any way that they need to push, the real patriots. And then there are the scumbags. Let's call them what they are, who
Mm.
fold like a cheap suit. These are the universities and the law firms that used to consider themselves so beneficial to the public who caved like that.
Yeah.
They are going to go down in infamy. And so is any elected official who decides the way to be a Democrat is to be a play Republican one more time. We are not playing with the old Republicans. We are dealing with people who fundamentally want to destroy this country and everything it stands for. And I fully intend, whether I'm locked up or not, to be on the right side of history.
Let's sit in that space for a minute because I think that foundation is something that you and I can stand on together. You used a phrase military coup. Was that a intentional framing, or are you, because we've been talking about the current coup as a soft coup, a paper coup? Is it a coup? It's a coming fascist coup. You said military coup, Attorney Krasner. That to me elevates this to a very different level of analysis that's needed to figure out how we navigate this moment. Was that intentional, or were you using it merely as a turn of phrase?
No, that's intentional. I don't think he's ready for a military coup before the midterms. But all of these moves, removing the capable, responsible leaders of the U.S. military who were not going to cave to him at the
Mm.
end of his first term, they're all getting removed one by one. We have that drunk ass Pete Hegseth running the
Mm.
military. The guy can't even control his thumbs. He's giving military secrets out left and right to every bozo he knows, and he knows a lot of bozos.
Indeed.
I mean, what does it mean when you deliberately take away all of the capacity, talent, knowledge, integrity of the military? Why would you do that unless the whole point is to get the wrong people in charge so that you can do the wrong thing? There's no
Mm.
doubt in my mind that in his perfect world, he is dictator for life. He is the quote benevolent leader, unquote, who is a malicious leader. There's no doubt in my mind that he surrounds himself with dictators because he wants to be one. He intends to be one. And all of these moves to make the judiciary meaningless, to make the military completely under his control with loyal fools, all of these moves are exactly what has been done historically to set up a military coup. I think that's where he
Wow.
intends to be, unless we absolutely smash him at the polls in the midterms. And I believe that's very possible, which is part of the reason I'm trying to elevate that with my own election in Philly.
Yes, and you are in a Democratic primary, I believe. May 20th is your election, running for district attorney. This would not be your first term. You have served faithfully. This will be your third term, I believe, if I'm reading this correctly. Talk to us about how the realities on the ground within the criminal legal system have shifted as a result of your being in this position and what your vision would be for a third term.
Sure, I'm happy to do that, but I also want people to understand what happens to me, it matters for a lot of people in Philly, but what is much, much, much more important is that Philly registers a ton of people, shows a ton of votes. Believe me, they will know that in Washington, D.C., this city's name and my name have been in Trump's mouth repeatedly, and the mouths of his minions. They know what it means when the most important swing state, no offense, other swing states, and the biggest city in that swing state, which is, a majority minority city with 6 Democrats for every Republican. They know what it means when they see a surge of registration, a surge of votes. It means they're doomed, and they should be doomed in the midterm. So I'm just as excited, whether I win or lose, and I expect to win, but I'm just as excited about building that voter base, improving the Big Tent of the Democratic Party so that we can save the country in the midterms, as whatever happens to me. Now, having said that, simply put, what have we done? Crime is way, way, way down. It's way, way, way down from when I started. I started in 2018. For example, today, this very day, the 2nd of May, we have the lowest number of homicides in 50 years on May the 2nd. It's actually more than 50 years. For example, there are 18 categories of crime in Philly. 15 of them are down. Okay. For example, for 4 consecutive years, Philly has led the nation in public safety improvements among cities of 1 million or more. And for some other examples, we have 45 innocent people who are exonerated and out of jail from life sentences because of the work of my office trying to be fair. We have the lowest county jail population we've seen in decades. We have had a massive reduction in the state prison population of Philadelphians. We went from 13,000 when I came in to 9,000 now. Almost 70% of the juveniles who used to be locked up in a jail-like setting are out. So we have our safety, we have our fairness, we have our freedom. We have them at the same time because it has never been a choice between these things. It's only people on the right who want you to believe that you can have your safety or you can have your freedoms. If you have them, if you know what you're doing, you have both, and they feed each other and they help each other.
You have been described as a progressive prosecutor, and that's a phrase that I actually like because it helps me to distinguish between prosecutors that are not and those who are, and considering the legacy of racialized racialized let me start over. Considering this nation's history of utter, complete, and total racism within the criminal legal system. There we are. It's important for us to have prosecutors, particularly because of the power that you have. It's important for us to have prosecutors who are taking steps to ensure that the justice we are seeking is actually equitably accessible to all of us. And yet, because you are a progressive prosecutor, you and attorneys general and other prosecutors who are in that sort of vein are facing some additional pressure. You said that your name and the name of Philly stays in Donald Trump's mouth. And we saw that this executive order that came out this week that is essentially allowing for another layer of that foundation that would lead us towards a more likely possibility of a militarized coup. And you say after the midterm elections, I hope we can last that long. But as a part of this executive order, there was also some language that indicates that this administration intends to use the power of the Department of Justice to come against prosecutors like yourself, attorneys general like Atish James, who was the attorney general for my state. Talk to us about what it means to not just live in the general realities of the threats that may come, but when you're seeing that they are actually issuing executive orders, which you and I as attorneys know are not necessarily law, but they can be given the same deference as law if you are going to have a Congress that will not step up and do its job, or any of the other branches of government that are willing to push back. Shout out to the judiciary holding on. What does it mean for the risks as against persons like yourself when you've got this sort of language baked into an executive order that is already allowing for a militarizing of our police force that will combine local policing with National Guard, with armed services? What does that look like for the justice system and for the folks for the roles of folks like yourself within it?
Well, from my perspective, it's real simple. No retreat, no surrender. You want to send me to El Salvador? I speak Spanish. Let's go. I mean, seriously.
Dígame. Ay, mi amor. Okay. My man said I speak some Spanish. All right. But obviously that I've been analogizing that to the fugitive slave trade because it is in my perspective as a black woman who has studied extensively throughout the legal system, when you are scooping people up off the street, selling them to another nation for money so that they will be forced to work for free, that is a revitalization of a slave trade. Folks like yourself did not fare well as advocates for the disenfranchised and for the enslaved during the previous time that this was a reality. What is that going to mean right now?
Well, number one, I completely agree with you. There's tremendous resonance here from a president who has been endorsed 2 times by the Ku Klux Klan for the notion that due process does not apply to specific portions of the population he designates. I think you are 100% on point. I've heard several of the most thoughtful, influential pastors I know articulate the same thing. I think that's 100% dead on. But obviously the issue isn't about me. The issue is that our judiciary needs to do its job. And I do think Donald Trump made a fatal mistake here, which is if his whole premise is to get a bunch of his flunkies in positions as judges and then to tell them that they don't have jobs anymore, some of them are not going to like it. They like their status. They like their lifetime appointment. They like their money. And they're like him. They're selfish as hell. So I think what he's running into and what he's going to run into is not every single one of them is ready to throw themselves out of the airplane without a parachute by saying, you're right, there's no judiciary. Some of them are happy to say, well, thanks for the appointment. I know I'm incompetent and I shouldn't be here in the first place. But now that I'm here, I'm for me. I'm not for you, Trump. I think that's actually what he's going to face. It's a fatal flaw in his nasty theory that I hope will persist. What this means is potentially catastrophic, and that's why we all have to fight so hard.